at the initial PEA, I made that statement that we think we're one of the highest margin businesses in the rare earth market outside of China, and that has been confirmed independently by Argus Media.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Rainbow Rare Earths CEO George Bennett. George, very good morning to you. You're out with an interim study on your Phalaborwa rare earth project, and it looks pretty encouraging following on from the previous PEA.
Yes, thanks, Stephen. Morning to you. A while ago, I announced a technical update on the Phalaborwa project around the pilot plant and so forth. And we indicated to the market that we'd have an interim study out before the end of the year. So I'm pleased to say that we have achieved that. And the interim study, I think, is very, very pleasing for Rainbow.
You do say that it confirms the viability of the projects and that it remains robust despite 2 years of inflation since the PEA.
Correct. I mean, we've experienced over the last years at least 6% per annum inflation. If you compound that over 2 years, purely inflated number for our capex would be about somewhere in the region of $330 million, and we've come in below that. So below the impact of inflation, and this is a result of optimization and lots of work by the technical team at Rainbow. We see projects all over the world blowing out massively on their capex numbers, and I'm pleased to say that we are in fact in the inflation, which is a good result, I think.
And you also reiterate, George, that with the low operating costs of the project, it'll be the highest margin rare earths project outside of China.
That's correct. At the initial PEA, I made that statement that we think we're one of the highest margin businesses in the rare earth market outside of China, and that has been confirmed independently by Argus Media and their report, and which is part of our RNS. And with the impact of inflation on OPEX, which would also have to be taken into account, our OPEX number and now comes out just above $40 per kg. That's of the full magnet rare earths, and that is just above inflation, and that's taking into account some 34+% inflation in power in South Africa. Going forward, we're going to look to optimize the cost of our power by looking at sources of renewable power, including solar power, and that we feel will bring down the power part of the OPEX quite a bit. So we see some optimization there. We also see further optimization on the CapEx by the time we publish the final DFS next year around plant layout, residue stacking, and one or two other small areas might help the overall economics even further going forward.
I mean, not included in the economics of the interim study, George, is the additional revenue streams that you can get from the sale of other non-magnet rare earths, as well as from the gypsum concentrate.
The gypsum, clean gypsum residue, yes. We do recognize that there'll be a bit of revenue from sale of the non-magnet REs, as well as gypsum sales on the clean benign gypsum we'll be restacking. And because we wanted to compare this economic assessment and this interim report to what was done in the PEA, we kept things the same. But it just proves our NPV has only been marginally impacted 2 years later. It's in line with the PEA, which I'm pleased to say. And as I said, going forward, if you look at our OPEX over all the rare earths that we produce, it's somewhere at about 12.93, I think, which is, we know, probably the lowest globally outside of China. So a very, very good result.
George, going into the new year, what should investors be looking out for? What are the next steps with the project?
We will be focusing on the optimization of the final separation purity levels, and that work has already started in our new laboratory in South Africa. And then we'll be running a pilot plant on the back end in South Africa. Our pilot plant is currently on the water being shipped from Florida to South Africa. We'll be in South Africa late January, and we'll be setting this up to do that final optimization of the purity levels on our separation process. And we're looking forward to very positive results coming out of that optimization process being done by the in-house Rainbow team.
I hope you'll keep us posted on any further progress, George. Thanks very much for speaking to us, and have a good rest of the year.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me on once again.
That's George Bennett, the CEO of Rainbow Rare Earths.